Hi, Christopher.
Hi,
Thanks for taking the time today. It's Friday afternoon for both of us. It's hopefully the last call of the day, is it?
almost.
Oh.
Almost.
Good. So, Christopher, we met each other on your journey to CTA, and good luck for your board soon. But today we have a slightly different topic. I looked at your CV on LinkedIn, and it's completely off. I have to say, I've seen many CVs, but yours is different than anything I saw. Let's start with the final point. What are you currently working as?
I'm working as a CTO for Capgemini Germany. I'm responsible for our Salesforce implementations there, mainly for like the technical aspect. So are we capable to deliver the project in that particular way? Are the Salesforce licenses, types, ideas we have matching with the customer demands and their requirements? And obviously also mainly in a kind of different way from, okay, what are the Salesforce trends currently? AI cloud, for example, right now, how we can make that applicable for our customers. And is that something we see as a kind of future invest we also want to take, or is that something which is currently just like a product with a lot of buzz and we potentially need to see how this will develop?
Okay. I know it's not on our list of prepared questions, agreed on questions, but hey, I want to ask you, what was for you the funniest fail of Salesforce products, which you either could predict or absolutely could not predict? Products which have been either retired or never went somewhere.
I mean, the most famous one is, I guess, Lightning Out, right? Where you
maybe you tell it to the others who are not on their journey to CTA, which we all have to study Lightning Out at some point.
Yeah. Is it better since 5 years now? 6 years?
Yes.
Yeah. Mainly, for example, the IoT cloud is a great example, right? Like, okay, the invest, they had an IoT cloud, the lot of buzz which was created around that, and then it turned out, okay, it's not like the real future, or I wouldn't say it's not a real future, it's wrong, but it went into the Salesforce ecosystem in another way, with like mainly AWS hyperscalers, informations are directly pushed, and the event-driven architecture, which was applied by Salesforce. So what the benefit of the IoT cloud was not really needed anymore. So that's a great example potentially.
Yes, I was very sad when I learned that IoT cloud was not moved, was discontinued. I was really sad when I was reading that. I also had great hope for IoT cloud. Yes, this brings us to the next topic. So Christopher, you made it from, I wrote it down here. You started your life as a community manager for on a German politics website, correct?
Yes, correct. That was like in the ages where you didn't have Facebook, or Facebook in Germany wasn't that common. Same applies for Twitter. And what they did was like creating a kind of today we would call it a kind of a forum or a kind of a Reddit, or even maybe kind of a Discord, however you want to phrase it, where you can directly get an exchange with a politician, and you could have ask him some questions about how is the construction work outside going on with like the street, how we improve our economics, how we generate more jobs, all those things. But it was curated. So I was a moderator for that to actually ensure that no conspiracy theories are on the platform and all those things.
And so and you studied politics as far as I know?
Yeah, that's correct. So I studied something which in German, which is called like Staatswissenschaften, which is like kind of a governmental study. So it was like politics, economics, but also law and order. Okay,
so hey, for most of us, we think so you made it all the way to CTO, and how old are you?
36.
36. So you made it all the way to CTO at Capgemini. By 36 without knowing how to code, kind of? You probably know a little bit of code, but
I know how to code, but I wouldn't call myself an expert, definitely not. I coded like the first page almost 25 years ago with like HTML as I was a kind of student or within the school days or back in those days, and also like some applications on languages like POW, which nobody knows potentially anymore. but I found it always too boring to study or like going that particular path. So I was always interested in all other things, and I was always IT affine, but I was never like in a situation where I thought, okay, that's something I would really like to focus on.
So how does someone become a CTO without being technical? Is that something you see in other CTOs as well? Are you unique? What have been some of the challenges on your road?
I guess, I mean, sometimes you will see some kind of question marks. Yeah, but taking the Salesforce ecosystem as a great example, Salesforce was like, there's a huge part. I mean, it's almost 23 years, 24 years old now, where you had the possibility with Apex to code everything, and everything was possible. And for most of the things, you had to rely on code. But the platform is evolving, especially in the last 3-4 years, to a kind of a declarative part. So the real demand for like coding abilities is potentially decreasing. That's also some kind of ambition Salesforce has, yeah, with like all their products they're providing and services. So that is like a current trend, and maybe I'm also like part of this trend in terms of like, okay, somebody with like maybe like a broader background in terms of like understanding also like the business part and aspect of it, and bringing that into this role is like the benefit I can offer.
What have been some of the, like, okay, I also am from a not coding background, and I have the imposter syndrome every day in my job because I'm surrounded by people who are extremely good at coding, know proper IT theories, and know what they talk about instead of me just trying to swim along. What have been some of your challenges? How did you overcome them?
I mean, one of those challenges where I had really to put effort in terms of learning is like how to set up like, or working with Git in terms of CI/CD, identity and access management. That are parts which I would say, okay, that is somehow challenging for me in terms of like understanding. So I had to put a lot of effort in that to understand, okay, how to work with all those kind of tools, with the tool chains, how to apply it. The challenging aspect right now with that is like, mostly in my current role, I'm not like developing consistently or looking at code consistently or at the time to do it. So we are all humans. I'm just forgetting things. So sometimes I'm just sitting in front of an Apex class and say, oh, okay, what is to get custodian? Oh, okay, this is a wrapper. This is like whatever. So this is like the purpose of it. So sometimes this is the challenging part, to remember things. But on the other hand, most of the things over time went into muscle memory. So you potentially don't know it directly. But if you're looking at maybe 1-2 seconds more, then okay, yeah, for sure. That's just giving me a JSON output, and yeah, this is like the formatting for it, and that's like the purpose for it. So
so despite your role as a CTO, you are still trying to be hands-on, at least in your free time or your study time?
Yeah, mainly obviously in the study time, but also sometimes in work, it's like, right now, mostly I'm in a role where I'm overseeing projects and I'm being the counterpart for our C-levels on the customer side. Mm-hmm. But sometimes there is that one particular challenge, we look at it, yeah, or where I'm younger colleagues reaching out, asking for help, and then I dive into those kind of topics.
How much younger can they be than you with 36?
That is super surprisingly, yeah. They all call me a boomer, so that's okay.
Yeah. So they reach out to you and you stay hands-on, but aren't you always two steps behind? Let's say with Git, with all the newest trends and the branching strategies, and then they are like, oh, why do we not use fast forward? And I'm like,
sometimes I'm just behind, not because I don't, or I'm overcoming it, let's phrase it in that way, that I'm asking the question, okay, why are we actually doing it? So that is somebody, it's also like my role is just like, okay, there's a particular challenge from a customer, like the customer is demanding something. And in my role, in my responsibility, sometimes it's good just to go, or I'm not that hands-on anymore and I'm not deeply involved in all those topics, that it's so much easier for me to just say, hey, why we are going not one step backwards and look, is that really necessary? What are you actually demanding? Is there really a business purpose, or is there a business value we're generating here? Or is there just a lot of effort, maybe on our side, which is potentially good for my company, but overall not increasing like the customer satisfaction?
This is a good point. Okay, Christopher, as we discussed before, I have a weak spot, which is business value. Can you teach me a few things there right now? I want to use that chance to learn something today from you. Christopher, what's your take on business? For a technical person, let's say I need to brush up my business value thinking. What's the first mistake I make?
Most of the one of those challenges in terms of business value is like you want to achieve something on the roadmap, but because you're so deep into the topic, you can't really think about like improving the process behind that. So like the typical one answer hard word, but I hate in terms of when I'm interacting with a customer is like why we are doing it, and you get the answer because it was like, or it's always like that, but nobody can really explain why we are doing things in a particular way. And mostly it was like because of the old legacy system is doing it in a particular way. And if you would jump 10 years back, like Back to the Future with like a time traveling machine, and you ask the colleagues why you're doing that particular way, there's maybe like there was a restriction in the legacy system, lack of resources, whatever, which caused them to implement that particular business process in that particular legacy system in the following way. And now 10 years later, everybody thinks like, okay, this is like the process, and it had to be like that for years, yeah, and we can't change it. So thinking in terms of business value is always like we want to create something meaningful, and meaningful means like today we want to achieve something or creating value for the customers, and they would use that value for the end customer to provide potentially a better service, a better user experience, to create more loyalty. All those aspects, depending on kind of which project you are focusing on, that's super important. And a risk is just like if you're just really good in like translating maybe a requirement into just the solution, but you don't have like the bigger picture. What is like the value add you're actually generating? Yeah. What is better from that? When you're implementing a solution in Salesforce, and for example, in the legacy system, you create a customer or customer onboarding process, took you 10 minutes. And you just copy the process, and in Salesforce, it took actually 10 minutes. So which kind of business value you generated?
Let's be honest, most of us are almost beaten into doing what we are told.
Yeah.
When did you make the jump from doing what you're told to thinking in terms of business value? You understand my point of view.
Yeah, I totally understand that point. It's
especially our customers don't ask us to improve their business process. They're never happy about that. You're never tasked.
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're just hiring to do us directly that job, to be that harsh to their team members potentially. But fairly speaking, sometimes it's just a gut feeling. When I see the old process and I see, okay, we don't improve it, then I try to stand up for it. It's sometimes it's just my purely gut feeling where I just felt, okay, we are not really improving ourselves here. We are not doing something meaningful. And that is like maybe one of the abilities I currently bring in is like having like the end-to-end picture always in mind. It's like, okay, and I mean, we both know each other from the CTA journey. One important aspect obviously is like not solving one particular requirement by requirement. You also have like the holistic solution in picture. And that is exactly what I'm doing in real life.
And where on your career, I mean, you moved to your ladder really fast. Where did you start thinking like that? How did you get also like the, let's say, the freedom or ability to think like that? Because I think we all can agree it's cool to be technically solid and it's important. This is our bread and butter, but it's not what made you CTO. You're not the most certified. You're not the most trails. You're probably not the best coder. You're often one of the top 100 Canvas experts nowadays, I heard.
I'm afraid that now people reaching out and I can't answer they're really tiny detailed questions. It started actually really early in my journey, but one thing I really realized was like maybe 5-6 years back. So I started at Capgemini 6 years ago, and I went into a project with a really tough timeline based on GDPR, and we tried to build, don't ask me why, to create a kind of a custom case assignment logic. So whenever there was like a particular logic, a combination out of words, so they seek for, like, they had a huge mapping table. Really did, I don't know how many effort they spent into that table. We had a huge table with like particular words, and you know, we both are German, so in Germany you have, or in German language, you can just combine words, so you can conduct those to really long words, and they presented me like words like, okay, here is like 50 characters plus 50 characters, and then assign it to the specify queue. And I was looking at the requirement and say, okay, yeah, obviously we can parse the whole case, but I'm pretty sure we disabled the feature because it's like, it was so weird, and we put so much effort in that. And that was like the really first moment where I realized, okay, sometimes enterprise customer asking for a specific thing which aren't really meaningful, because it turned out the logic was way too complex. Cases ended in the wrong queue because it was like just too complex to handle.
And what did you take away from that? I mean, you obviously built, I mean, it was your first project. I think you don't start your first project at Capgemini by saying, I know it better, dear enterprise customer, let's not do that.
Yeah, it was actually the second project. Yeah, it was actually the second project. And what I took away was actually 50 euros, because I bet with one of the colleagues that was a feature we turn off.
Congratulations on that. But how did you approach it the next time? The next time something like that showed up, because honestly, you leave money on the table in this case.
Yeah,
I know your salespeople will not be happy. You can.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the customer is not happy if you're building a functionality, a feature which potentially they can't maintain, or it's not meaningful at the end, because then maybe on the short term we generated some money, a little bit more maybe, because we had the effort on our side, depending on the project style, of course. But on the long term, we don't create trust with the customer. The customer is potentially not trusting us because we're just doing what they told us. And sometimes, and that's like the value that we can deliver, or where I see this is like the strongest part in our side, is like having that kind of capability to understand also like the business purpose behind it and the business value, and always looking at it and try to challenge it as good as possible. Obviously, they know their business much better than we know, but sometimes it's really important that to ask, or to trying to understand it. So why we are doing it. And if they can't explain me why we are doing it, then it's easy to challenge them, obviously. But is there no way that we can do it simpler? So taking it back for the case, Salesforce has the queue logic. You can potentially do a lot of things with out-of-the-box case assignment rules. Why spending so much time and effort in building something custom? Why not starting small, looking at the assignment, and potentially just after a while you can come up with like an additional piece.
So you will be laughing, Christopher, but I was part of a very similar project, just with leads. We also, the project was, it was a huge multi-system project where the idea was we use extremely advanced algorithm to match the perfect lead with the perfect sales agent. It was, I don't know, I didn't see all the way to the end, but I saw it for almost 1.5 to 2 years, and it was like a race car. It was impossible to maintain. If it had worked, we never could prove it actually makes business sense, but it was just impossible to maintain. It was not a daily driver, I think, as you say, in the car industry. Yeah,
exactly. If you can't maintain it, then it's difficult. Yeah, then a functionality, as good as it is potentially designed and as good as it's potentially working, if you can't maintain it, then it's not simple. And if it's not simple or easy to use, then the value is decreasing over time.
If you rely on 2 or 3 highly qualified people to maintain it, and one of them leaves,
the guy who wrote this is gone.
Okay, yeah. And best case scenario, it was done so well that it keeps on going itself like a magic box. But worst case scenario, it breaks from time to time, and nobody can repair the magic box anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
This becomes the same as with processes. Is it the same with processes? If process is so complex that can nobody explain why the process is that way?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant before. Yeah. Sometimes that is like, well, what you described is if you're designing such a kind of a complex application, and maybe within the legacy systems, we see those kind of long growing, homegrown applications, maybe developed 15, 20 years, and where people put a lot of effort in to make it as good as it is. Yeah. And nowadays, then, yeah, nobody potentially can understand it anymore, because like the people who built that, they're gone. What is like the purpose? The documentation is maybe not as good as it should be, as always in most of the projects. So, and then it's like the fear, or like you're on a kind of path dependency. That is like the theory word behind that. You put so much effort in a particular way that you can't leave the way anymore.
Path dependency. This is your social worker / politics studies background. I know that from my social worker friend. The path dependency.
The path dependency, yeah.
It's a dangerous place to be.
You have a way, and you went that way, and you put so much effort in that that you think, I can't go backwards anymore because I realize I made a mistake. You will always go further.
You always go. I have to. So if I take my tech friends, let's say one of them wants to become CTO. What do you tell them? So let's do 10 certifications, 300 trails, currently developer at I don't know, a large scale Indian SI. What do you tell them to become CTO of Capgemini? You know, you want to, what do you tell them to become the next Christopher Capgemini of CTO in Germany? What's the next step? Literally,
you're asking you're asking to make myself redundant.
Yes, always. This should always be our goal.
Yeah, indeed. Focus on governance, actually. Really focus on like how to. I mean, it's good to know the application and everything by heart, but how you bring the application actually to life, how you can advocate for certain things, how you can present certain things, how you can things look easy, make it easy, or feel like as is like an easy solution. That are very important aspects. How to ensure that you have like the maturity when it comes to a certain discussion, how you can inspire people. That is very, very important. Yes, you can be inspiring when you know all the kind of nitty-gritty technical details, but the thing and the important part is like how they can actually, or how you can creating trust in your person, in terms of, okay, he can do way more than like being the best, let's say, LWC Salesforce coder around in the world, or the best Apex developer, or the best integration specialist. How you can actually creating trust that you have more capabilities. And there's politics plays a crucial role, but also like just the ability to be inspiring.
Is something everyone, so I read a lot of LinkedIn profiles over the last couple of weeks to see actually how people become where you are. And I saw two commonalities. You're basically the exception, but I saw half of them being project manager at some point.
Yep.
And the other half actually being something like sales, pre-sales, even, or sometimes even proper sales, stuff like that. How many people you actually see who are hardworking coders becoming CTO?
I would assume that are the minority, and that's like, if you're going one step backwards, that's the typical, let's do quotation marks, the typical journey most people have is like when they become an architect, a Salesforce architect, is like from a developer, maybe developing into a lead developer role, and then the next step from their perspective is mainly like, okay, I want to be an architect. But this step is really, really huge for most of those people, because like the skill set is totally changing. Right now, they are working in kind of an isolated boxes, and we're doing from a Salesforce perspective, everything like that. Each kind of developer is working more or less like isolated with all the kind of stretch orgs and all those examples. Where we really try to keeping them isolated. And now we want to push them into like a more oversee role, like an architect, where you don't look at all of those nitty-gritty details, where you have like the full end-to-end picture, the full responsibility. And with that responsibility, you need kind of a different skill set. You need to do much more in terms of managing, keeping everybody happy. Sometimes it's okay to have like, to accept a degree of technical debt, but you keep the whole team happy because the team thinks this is the best solution. Potentially it's not your opinion, but yeah, that are some kind of soft skills you just need to have. Sometimes it's not like it's sometimes good to be devil's advocate, but sometimes it's also good if everybody is happy with a solution, then accept it also. And that is what I mean with like having those kind of social skills, soft skills, to be kind of inspiring, to let people, to creating also visions for them and for their career. That is like very important.
I come back to my hypothetical. So I have two more questions. The first one is a pet question from a person. What do you think about the concept of working hard? We have this discussion. I mean, we are a community from around the world, and it's really interesting to see different, let's say, cultures. What's your approach to working hard?
Work hard is sometimes necessary,
Okay.
but it shouldn't. In most kind of the cases, we're doing an endurance race, and we're doing not a sprint. And I'm seeing work hard as maybe as a kind of a sprint. If you take that analogy, and in most of the cases, it's more like about the consistency. You achieve more if you're working consistently and deliver like the same quality, then you achieve potentially more if you organize yourself very good, instead of like trying to be involved in everything, trying to solve everything. It's nothing which is in terms of well-being is like the right approach. Yes, sometimes it's necessary to do some kind of crunches, especially in our job. We all know that. There are some kind of hard deadlines we need to fulfill, and sometimes at the end it can get really, really busy, but it shouldn't be like the daily work.
Yeah, they apparently they never move Black Friday just because they have a week of vacation. They still want to go live. They never move the Black Friday.
Yeah. But going live on a Black Friday is never a good idea, but
we all have done it. We all have seen it. This is a fun question. I have to remind me if we forget it, because this is my fun question. But before that, I'm super curious about all the answers. If I want to be as good as a service person to you, what do I have to do to make my CTO happy? And like, what's the things, you already said predictability, same output every week, basically, I would say.
Yeah.
I
mean, not like it's impossible to have like the same output, but being consistently is very important. Reliable, that are aspects I really value, and open-minded is also super important. So if you want to inspire me, be open-minded, and having own ideas is also very important.
Mm-hmm. What is good? Now, before we wrap it up, I have one very technical question. We talked about enterprise, and I've been in the enterprise projects I've been, there was always heaps of legacy systems, and almost none of them ever are decommissioned. We always build on top of them. We talked about it a little bit before, and maybe you can share what you actually use Salesforce for nowadays. I found it very fascinating. With your customers.
I mean,
what's your customers? Maybe you should start with your customers. You have the broom customers.
Yeah, we have mainly within our practice the automotive customers. So we're serving German, yeah. So we're working for the automotive and manufacturing industry, but mainly automotive. Yeah, that's our customer base. And obviously the challenge there is they right now going through a huge transformation, not in terms of like only from combustion engine to an EV engine, just from a pure technical aspect, like really from the product itself, but also from like changing their sales strategy from working like in an dealership model, and then they're moving into like kind of an agency model, similar like Tesla. and that brings a lot of challenges with it, yeah, from an IT perspective. And the interesting is like they all have their homegrown 200 plus applications, and the challenging aspect is now Salesforce just comes on top of that, somehow needs to squeeze in and fit in. And yeah, sometimes it's just a pure UI, because you have so many underlying systems where Salesforce is potentially aggregating certain data. But yeah, that's the way how it is. But our ambition is always like to develop it further in that kind of way that it's like really the centric application for all the kind of customer touch points, for all the kind of communication, so that's the kind of source of truth system in that kind of way when it comes down to handling and dealing with customers.
Do you ever really see Salesforce as the central system where it's the source of truth for anything with the enterprise customers? Because I just wrote a sentence here from my notes, like Salesforce is used as a UI to abstract away the 200 underlying homegrown systems. I wonder where Salesforce should be the master for what of the 200 information points. Maybe the latest case, maybe. But I would see another system probably.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me in that way, and to providing a generic answer, if you have the ambition for all kind of customer touch points, so whenever you interact with the customer and there Salesforce is the center of truth, and you communicate just via Salesforce tools to the customer, if it's like with like a CTI integration, with like digital engagement in terms of you communicating via SMS, WhatsApp, or whatever, or even with the Marketing Cloud and their capabilities, that could be a starting point. Obviously, sometimes you need, or you have like underlying system for kind of aggregating customer data in like an MDM system or whatever. But from that MDM system, you should never interact with the customer, because you're just adding an UI layer on top of that MDM system and then sending out emails, for example.
Okay, so Salesforce is, if we break it down in your enterprise system, the source of truth for tracking the emails, SMS, and calls we made with our customer.
That is like squeezed in a very very nice way, but I would use a kind of different way, as like all customer interactions, and that didn't sound that negative.
Sorry, I didn't want to say that negative. Sorry, I take it back.
No, not negative, but it's not like purely. It's a very important aspect if you see it in that way. The customer is expecting that.
This is the transformation you're talking about. They finally have interaction with the customer.
They finally have interactions, most of them with their customers the first time. That is obviously one aspect. And keeping it that way, I mean, there's this phrase, Amazon-like service. Everybody is expecting like an Amazon-like service. And if you have like an application or a homegrown system landscape underneath with 200 plus legacy systems with tons of different kind of potentially touch points with like different call centers, with different teams, it's really hard for some companies to really like being up to date. How often you call like a customer service because you maybe just want to do address update or whatever, because you move from one to another, or you want to change something, your subscription or whatever, and it's really difficult to actually achieve that. And there is like, yeah, the aspect where Salesforce can add value, because you can provide Amazon-like service to your customers. Potentially you also have like the ambition to really like providing luxury experience. And then one huge aspect of it is, obviously, I'm taking the German automotive industry. They are all kind of, or have their luxury brands, and they want to deliver luxury customer experience, and having like a CRM system as heart of the application is really, really important for them.
Now I get it. So okay, first I want to get from the other side. Now I understand. They are, or we both agree, or never change the running system, or you wouldn't recommend to your customers to change decommission one of these 200 systems if it's working.
I would recommend it in that way, that if you replace it with another tool or the functionalities, or if you don't need it anymore, then obviously we can sunset or decommission it, yes.
But not
or
for
do
the
a lift
sake
and
of,
shift, yeah.
But
yeah,
not for the
that's
sake
just
of,
like just not for doing it. Yeah.
Like I come back to you, you say we always have to add something meaningful to our customers' business value. If we just replace something with Salesforce, it's not meaningful yet. But you are telling me for the automotive, for legacy industries, adding Amazon-like service is really something new, something unique for them. And there is no other tool they have currently. They need Salesforce to be able to provide that.
Yeah, sometimes that's just the case, yeah.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. I find it really fascinating because I come from a background where they often build I was working in Berlin startups. They built the company from the customer service point of view and then built the company around the customer service. And I think car manufacturers built their company around the cars first, and the customer service was not an afterthought. But
exactly. Taking the automotive industry or taking the manufacturing industry, as a German or the main important German industries, they are good in doing or inventing and developing products. But we are not, or they are not really good in like creating like services and providing service. So that is like the transformation they are currently on or undergoing, and where we with the aid of Salesforce can add and help to be part of the journey.
Nice. I want to hear, before we move on to the last question, I hope you have a couple of minutes. I want to share a small story, which is very fascinating for me, about the German bureaucracy. We both know it. In Germany, we love to hate our bureaucracy, but I'm with one of the the public health insurances, the DRK. And every time I call them, they have amazing customer service. So no matter what touchpoint I use, WhatsApp, email or my mobile app or telephone, it all runs into the same system. When I call them, they always have all the information they must have some CRM system. I don't know how they do it. So if I can change my address, ask for the latest invoice, and check the status of my payout in one call without them changing the system. There must be a really good CRM working on their side. This is the level of customer service I expect nowadays.
Exactly. So you don't want to, depending on what kind of information, but how often you call a customer service and you realize, or you inherit their IT problems and their IT landscape, and you realize it on the phone. Yeah, in terms of like, yeah, okay, I need to read you to another person. And then you're telling the story again, yeah, after you wait 5 minutes in the line. Yeah, I want to do this and that, like canceling my invoice or doing whatever. Okay, yeah, then you need to move to the accounting, and then they forward you to the accounting, and then they open their system. And that's not like the customer service you typically would expect.
Got it. So which industry is next for you, Christopher? Now, you revolutionized the German automotive industry. I heard you are almost done there. What's next for you afterwards?
We are really interested in the telco industry, obviously. We still believe there in the growth. And you already made the joke with like the German public sector, that's always like super interesting.
The German public sector must be one of the biggest industries in the world. It's a huge sector. It's one of the
It's obviously huge, and there's a lot of tasks to do in terms of like digitalization. So that there's still some time for us to invent some better solutions. Let's phrase it in that way.
Good. Hey, Christopher, so far, I want to ask you one final question. I know you have to jump to a next call. Thanks already for taking the time. What was your biggest fuck up in your career? I can start with mine. So I set the stage. I once accidentally sent out 50,000 French SMS to American customers. Good news is none of them cared, apparently. They didn't even call us. So they just ignored it. But I felt really bad. What was your biggest fuck up?
I guess it was like, okay, two. One Salesforce related and one non-Salesforce related. The non-Salesforce related, I worked as a working student for Groupon actually, and overnight I had a kind of a database job, and I just crushed more or less like with my job the database. So a couple of people had to come to the office from Saturday night to Sunday night to actually do some kind of recovery work. That was like Yeah, okay, not ideal. And maybe Salesforce related. So with the first customer I worked for, we've implemented a solution for actually kind of like a subsidiary solution. So or a substitute solution. So whenever somebody, I mean, it's summertime now, somebody's going on vacation, and you need the kind of a step and a replacement. So we build a logic or something where we had a batch job and which was running. Okay, you can select, okay, Johan, for example, is taking over my task and duties. And the task and duties was like working on the account, creating like contacts, potentially if there's a new contact, and so on and so on, and working with some campaigns and doing orders and yeah, all those things. Yeah, and after roughly 1 year, the customer came back and said, yeah, this feature is really good, but for whatever reason, like for 25% of those customers you're actually sharing, the sharing is not revoked. And I thought, okay, the batch job is not working. But it wasn't a batch job, actually. It was like, because the stand-ins, they took their work so seriously, they, for example, they created contacts. And then they also had still access to the account because of the implicit sharing. So that was the first moment when I realized, okay, there's something like implicit sharing.
Oh, implicit sharing, which is one of the banes of our existence, almost like it exists. I assume your customer was really bad. So thank you very much, Christopher. This is my final question before we wrap it up. What is the one thing, if I have 40 hours time left in the next 3 months, what do you recommend to me to learn, to improve, to practice on?
I mean, in the recent days, I spent so much time in identity and access management, and there's so much stuff to learn about that, and functionalities. You really can create really cool stuff around that. And one particular thing is obviously like Canvas components.
Maybe I should brush up on my identity, because we talked about it a little bit before. I don't know the parameters anymore. I would be hard pressed to build an OAuth flow nowadays, maybe to brush up on identity and access.
I will ask you on Monday to label the claims.
Oh, no. All of them. Good. Thank you very much, Christopher. And with that, have a nice weekend and see you soon.